The alarm bell rang through the Galactic Defense Academy at exactly 0600 hours. Cadet Lee Hannah rolled out of her narrow bunk and hit the cold metal floor with her bare feet. Around her, other cadets were doing the same thing, but they were not. Like her, Cadet Taro Beck stretched his long reptilian arms and yawned, showing rows of sharp teeth. His green scales caught the morning light from the small window. Next to him, Cadet Nix Voda simply floated up from their sleeping pad. Nix was made of pure energy and glowed soft blue in the dark room. Hannah was the only human in Barracks Section 7. She was also the smallest cadet there. "Move fast," Meatbag Taro said to her with a laugh. "Commander Malari does not like slow students." Hannah said nothing. She had learned that talking back only made things worse. She put on her gray uniform and followed the others to the main hall. The Galactic Defense Academy was huge. It floated in space around a small moon. Through the big windows, Hannah could see stars everywhere. Ships from 100 different worlds came and went every day. This was where the best soldiers in the galaxy learned to fight, but Hannah was not supposed to be here. Humans were new to the galaxy. Most alien races thought they were weak and stupid. Earth had only joined the Galactic Alliance 5 years ago. The Academy only took humans because the Alliance said they had to. In the main hall, 300 cadets stood in perfect lines. There were tall blue Altarians with 4 arms. There were rock-like granite people who could lift a small ship. There were flying zephyrs who moved like living wind, and there were 12 humans scattered among all the others like tiny dots. Commander Vex Malari walked to the front of the hall. She was 8 feet tall and made of living crystal. When she moved, her body made musical sounds like wind chimes. Her voice was cold and sharp. "Cadets," she said, "today we begin the final test." The hall became very quiet. Everyone knew about the final test. It was called the Extinction Protocol. Most cadets who took it did not come back alive. "You will go to Infernus Prime," Commander Malari continued. "You must survive for 72 hours. The planet will try to kill you in every way possible: acid storms, deadly animals, heat that can melt metal, cold that can freeze your blood." Hannah felt her heart beating fast. She had read about Infernus Prime in the Academy Library. It was one of the most dangerous worlds in the galaxy. The planet had 2 suns that made the weather crazy. One moment it was burning hot, the next moment it was freezing cold. "The Academy computers have calculated survival chances for each of you," Commander Malari said. She looked around the room with her crystal eyes. "These numbers are based on your species, your training, and your test scores." A hologram appeared in the air above their heads. It showed a list of names and numbers. Hannah saw Taro Beck at the top with 67% survival chance. Nix Voda had 71%. The rock people had numbers in the 80s. Hannah looked for her own name. She found it at the very bottom of the list. Lee Hannah, 2% survival chance. Some cadets started to laugh. Taro pointed at the hologram and slapped his knee. 2%, he said loudly. "The human might as well jump out an airlock right now." More laughter filled the hall. Hannah felt her face getting hot. She wanted to run away and hide, but she stayed where she was. Commander Malari hit her crystal hand on the metal podium. The sound rang through the hall like a bell. Everyone became quiet again. "Cadet Lee Hannah," the commander said, "step forward." Hannah's legs felt like water, but she walked to the front of the hall. 300 pairs of eyes watched her. Some were curious, most were amused. A few looked sorry for her. "Cadet Hannah," Commander Malari said, "the computers say you have only a 2% chance to live through this test. Do you understand what this means?" Hannah looked up at the tall crystal woman. Her throat felt dry, but she managed to speak. "Yes, ma'am. Do you wish to withdraw from the test? There is no shame in knowing your limits." The hall was so quiet that Hannah could hear her own heartbeat. This was her chance to quit. To go back to Earth and live a safe, normal life. No one would blame her. Everyone expected humans to be weak. But then Hannah remembered something. She remembered her grandmother's stories about the old days on Earth, about humans who climbed the highest mountains just because they were there, about people who sailed across dangerous oceans in tiny boats, about explorers who walked into dark caves and frozen lands where no one had gone before. Her grandmother always said the same thing. Humans are not the strongest, or the fastest, or the smartest, but we are the most stubborn. When everyone else gives up, we keep going. Hannah took a deep breath. She looked up at Commander Malari and spoke in a clear, loud voice. "Ma'am, if I only have a 2% chance to survive, what am I supposed to do with the other 98%? The hall exploded with noise. Some cadets laughed even harder. Others looked confused. A few nodded with respect. Commander Malari stared down at the small human girl. For a long moment, nobody moved. Then something strange happened. The crystal woman's cold expression changed. Just a little. It might have been a smile. "Interesting answer, Cadet Hannah," she said. "Very well, you will take the test." Hannah walked back to her place in line. Her heart was still beating fast, but now it was different. Now it was excitement, not fear. After the meeting, cadets gathered in small groups to plan for the test. Team-ups were allowed. Most species stuck together. The rock people formed one group. The flying zephyrs made another. The energy beings like Nyx created their own team. Hannah walked from group to group, but no one wanted her. "Sorry, human," said a four-armed Altarian. "You will just slow us down." "Nothing personal," said one of the rock people, "but 2% is not good odds." Even the other humans avoided her. They had formed their own group and did not want the weakest link dragging them down. Finally, Hannah was alone. She sat on a bench outside the barracks and looked up at the stars. Tomorrow, she would go to one of the most dangerous planets in the galaxy. She would go alone. She had only a 2% chance to come back alive. But she was smiling, because 98% was still a lot of room to surprise everyone. The transport ship shook as it entered the atmosphere of Infernus Prime. Hannah gripped her seat and looked out the small window. The planet below looked angry. Red and orange clouds swirled around like a giant storm. Lightning flashed between them in colors she had never seen before. Through gaps in the clouds, she could see the ground changing from white ice to glowing red rock as the planet's two suns moved across the sky. "Attention, cadets," came the pilot's voice over the speaker. "We are now entering the drop zone. You have 60 seconds to prepare." Around her, the other cadets checked their equipment one last time. Taro Beck touched his laser rifle and smiled. His reptilian skin could handle extreme heat, so he looked confident. Nyx Voda floated quietly, their energy form shimmering blue. The rock people sat still like mountains. They were almost impossible to hurt. Hannah checked her own gear. She had a basic survival pack with food for 3 days, a water recycler, an emergency shelter, and a simple plasma knife. Her equipment was the cheapest the Academy had. Human technology was still behind most alien tech. 30 seconds, the pilot announced that the ship's belly opened up. Cold air rushed in, making everyone shiver. Below them was the shifting barrens, a huge desert that changed from ice to lava and back again every 18 hours. "Drop Zone Alpha," the pilot called out. "Altarians and Granite people, go now." The blue four-armed aliens jumped out first. Their antigrav belts slowed their fall. The rock people followed, dropping like stones. They hit the ground hard, but did not break. "Drop Zone Beta. Energy beings and Zephyrs, you're up." Nyx Voda and the other energy creatures floated out of the ship like glowing clouds. The flying Zephyrs spread their wings and sailed away on the wind. "Drop Zone Gamma. Reptilian species, move out." Taro gave Hannah a mocking salute. "Try not to die too fast, human," he said. Then he jumped with his team. More groups followed. Soon, only Hannah and 2 other humans were left. "Drop Zone Omega," the pilot said. "Final drop, good luck." The other humans jumped together, their parachutes opening right away. They wanted to land safe and find a place to hide. Hannah waited. She looked Down at the shifting barrens below, the Academy computers had called it the most dangerous zone on the planet. That's why they saved it for last. That's why they put her there. Last chance, Cadet, the pilot said. Jump now, or we leave orbit. Hannah stood at the edge of the open door. The wind pulled at her hair. Far below, the ground was covered in ice that sparkled like diamonds. But she knew that in a few hours, it would be hot enough to melt metal. She closed her eyes and remembered her grandmother's voice. When Hannah was little, they lived on a frontier colony world called New Dakota. It was a hard place with long winters and short summers. Most families left after a few years, but not Hannah's family. Why do we stay, Grandma? Little Hannah had asked one cold night. Other people say, this world is too hard. Her grandmother had smiled and pointed outside their window. The aurora lights were dancing across the sky in green and gold. Because beautiful things are always in dangerous places, she had said. And because humans don't run from hard things, we learn from them. Hannah opened her eyes and jumped. The fall was longer than she expected. Her small parachute opened just in time to slow her down before she hit the frozen ground. The ice cracked under her feet but held. She rolled up her parachute and looked around. The shifting barrens stretched out in every direction. Mountains of ice rose up like frozen waves. The air was so cold it hurt to breathe. Hannah checked her equipment. Her heart sank. The water recycler had a crack in it from the landing. Green fluid leaked out and froze on the ice. Without it, she would die of thirst in less than a day. She opened her food pack. Half the meal bars were crushed and scattered. The emergency shelter had a hole in it. From her rough landing, any other cadet would have activated their emergency beacon and called for rescue. But Hannah knew that was not really an option. The Academy expected her to fail. If she called for help now, they would just confirm that humans were too weak for the galaxy. Instead, she did something different. She started walking. The broken equipment made noise as she moved, so she threw most of it away. She kept only the plasma knife, 2 meal bars, and some basic tools. Everything else was just extra weight. As she walked across the ice, she noticed things. The way the wind blew. The color of the sky. The pattern of cracks in the frozen ground. Her grandmother had taught her to watch everything when she was in a dangerous place. After an hour, she found something interesting. There was a line of dark rocks sticking up through the ice. They were perfectly straight, like someone had built a wall. But as she got closer, she realized what they really were. They were bones. Giant bones from some huge creature that had died. Here long ago, Hannah climbed up on the largest bone and looked around. From up high, she could see more bone lines stretching across the barrens. They made a pattern like the ribs of a massive skeleton. Then she understood. This whole area had once been inside a giant creature. Maybe the biggest animal that ever lived. The bones were all that was left. But bones could be useful. Hannah climbed down and started gathering smaller pieces. The bone was harder than steel, but much lighter. She used her plasma knife to cut and shape them. Soon, she had made a simple spear and a bone knife. The sky started to change color. The 2 suns were moving, which meant the temperature would start to rise soon. In a couple hours, this frozen wasteland would become a burning desert. Other cadets would try to find shelter and wait it out, but Hannah had a different idea. She found a place where the ice was thin and started breaking it. With her bone spear, underneath was black rock that had been heated and cooled many times. It was full of holes like a sponge. Perfect. As the suns moved higher, the ice began to melt. Other cadets were probably panicking now, trying to keep cool as the temperature rose, but Hannah filled her makeshift containers with the melting ice water. She had solved her water problem. The bone spear worked great for digging. She made a simple shelter in the spongy rock, using bones to hold up a roof. When the real heat came, she would be underground, where it was cooler. As the day grew hotter, she heard sounds in the distance. Roars and screams from the alien wildlife that lived on Infernus Prime. The creatures were waking up as the ice melted. Most cadets would be afraid. But Hannah smiled. She had learned something important already. This planet was not just trying to kill them, it was testing them. And tests always had patterns. You just had to be smart enough to figure them out. By evening, 12 cadets had already been eliminated. Their emergency beacons had activated automatically when their life signs went critical. But in the deep desert, a small human was not just surviving, she was learning. And in her simple bone shelter, she was planning what to do next. The Academy computers had said she had a 2% chance. But computers did not understand something important about humans. They got more dangerous. When things got impossible, Day 2 began with a sound that made Hannah's blood run cold. It was a howl that seemed to come from everywhere at once. Long and deep, like wind through a cave. But this was no wind. This was something alive. Something hunting. Hannah crawled out of her bone shelter and looked around. The shifting barrens had changed again during the night. What had been burning hot desert was now a field of black glass. The ground was still warm under her feet, but cooling fast. In the distance, she could see the shapes of other cadets moving. Across the glass field, they looked tiny and alone. Some were running. Others were trying to hide behind rocks. Then she saw what they were running from. The Infernus Stalkers were unlike anything in the Academy textbooks. They moved like liquid shadow, flowing across the ground without making a sound. Sometimes they looked solid, like giant black cats with too many teeth. Other times they seemed to fade away, like smoke, only to appear somewhere else. Hannah counted at least 6 of them, spread across the barrens. They were hunting the cadets like a pack of wolves. She watched as one stalker approached a group of Altarians who were hiding behind a pile of rocks. The 4-armed aliens had their weapons ready. They fired their plasma rifles at the creature. The energy beams passed right through it. The stalker became solid again and pounced. Its claws were as long as swords. The Altarians' emergency beacons activated one by one. 3 more cadets eliminated. Hannah's hands shook as she gripped her bone spear. These creatures could phase in and out of solid matter. Weapons could not hurt them when they were like smoke. How was anyone supposed to fight something like that? She was about to crawl back into her shelter when something made her stop. One of the stalkers had broken away from the pack. It was moving toward her, but slowly. Not like it was hunting, more like it was curious. The creature stopped about 50 feet away from her shelter. It sat down like a giant cat and tilted its head. Its eyes were bright yellow and seemed to look right into her soul. Hannah's first instinct was to run, or hide, or call for help. But something her grandmother had told her came back to her mind. When you meet a wild animal, her grandmother had said, never show fear, never show aggression, show respect. Hannah stood up slowly. She kept her bone spear at her side, not pointing it at the creature. She looked the stalker in its yellow eyes and spoke in a calm voice. Hello, she said. I am not here to hurt you. The stalker tilted its head the other way. It made a sound like a purr mixed with a growl. Then it did something that shocked her. Laid down and put its massive head on its paws. Like a dog waiting for its owner to throw a stick. Hannah stared at the creature. This was not what the Academy files had said about Infernus Stalkers. They were supposed to be mindless killing machines. But this one was acting almost intelligent. She took a careful step forward. The stalker did not move. Another step, still nothing. Soon, she was close enough to touch the creature's black fur. Up close, she could see scars on its hide. Old wounds from fights with other predators. This was not a young animal. This was an experienced hunter that had survived many battles. You know this place, don't you? She whispered. You know all its secrets. The stalker made that purring growling sound again. Then it stood up and started walking away. After a few steps, it stopped and looked back at her. It wanted her to follow. Hannah looked around at the glass field where other cadets were still being hunted. She could stay here and hide until the test was over. Maybe she would survive, maybe not, or she could trust a predator that should want to kill her. She followed the stalker. The creature led her across the cooling glass to a place she had not seen before. There was a crack in the ground, about 10 feet wide and very deep. Warm air rose from it, carrying strange smells. The stalker jumped across the crack easily. On the other side, it looked back at her. Hannah measured the distance. It was too far for a human to jump, but there were ledges on the sides of the crack. She could climb down and then back up. As she climbed, she noticed something interesting. The walls of the crack were covered with marks, not natural scratches. These looked like symbols, like writing. At the bottom of the crack was a small cave. The stalker was waiting for her there. Inside the cave, Hannah found something amazing. It was full of bones, but not random bones like she had found before. These were arranged in patterns. Some were carved with the same symbols she had seen on the walls. Others were shaped into tools and weapons. "This is not just a den," she said out loud. "This is a workshop." The stalker made its purring sound and nudged one of the carved bones toward her. Hannah picked it up and looked at it carefully. The symbols seemed to tell a story. Pictures of the planet's two suns. Pictures of the temperature changes. Pictures of creatures working together. "You are not just animals," she realized. "You are people. You have a culture." The stalker's yellow eyes seemed to glow brighter. It walked to another part of the cave and picked up a bone tool with its teeth. Then it started scratching symbols in the dirt. Hannah watched carefully. The symbols showed the planet's cycle, hot and cold, day and night. But there was something else. The symbols showed groups of creatures surviving by working together, not fighting each other. "The test," she whispered. "It is not about being the strongest. It is about being smart enough to work together." The stalker nodded. Actually nodded, like it understood her words. Outside the cave, Hannah could hear more emergency beacons going off. More cadets were being eliminated. The other stalkers were still hunting. But now she understood why. The cadets who were being hunted were the ones who tried to fight or hide. They were acting like prey. The predators were just doing what predators do. But what if someone acted differently? What if someone acted like a partner instead of prey? Hannah looked at her new friend. "Will you help me save the others?" The stalker stood up and walked to the cave entrance. It made a sound that was not quite a howl, not quite a roar. It was calling to the other stalkers. Soon, 5 more shadows appeared at the edge of the crack. They looked down at Hannah with glowing yellow eyes. She could feel their power. Any one of them could kill her in seconds, but they did not attack. They were waiting. Hannah climbed out of the crack and stood in front of the pack. She was a tiny human, surrounded by giant predators. She should have been terrified. Instead, she felt something she had never felt before. She felt like she belonged. "Listen," she said to the stalkers. "There are other people on this planet. Young people who are scared and alone. They do not understand your ways like I do. But they are not bad, they just need to learn." The lead stalker made a questioning sound. "Help me teach them," Hannah said. "Help me show them that this planet is not their enemy. Show them that you are not their enemy. We can all survive this together." The pack of stalkers looked at each other. They made sounds that might have been talking. Then the leader came forward and touched Hannah's hand with its nose. It was warm and rough, like a cat's tongue. The other stalkers surrounded her, not to trap her, but to protect her. She was part of the pack now. Across the glass field, the remaining cadets saw something impossible. A small human girl was walking toward them, surrounded by the most dangerous predators on the planet. But the predators were not hunting her. They were following her. Like she was their leader. Taro Beck, who was hiding behind a broken rock formation, stared in shock. "That is impossible," he whispered. "Humans cannot do that." But Hannah was proving that humans could do a lot of impossible things. When you stopped thinking like prey and started thinking like pack. Day 3 started with a warning that made everyone on Infernus Prime look up at the sky in fear. The two suns were moving closer together. Soon they would line up perfectly, creating what the Academy files called the binary eclipse. When that happened, the planet would become hell itself. Hannah stood on a high ridge with her pack of stalkers around her. She could see the remaining cadets scattered across the landscape below. Only 8 were left alive. There was Taro Beck and 2 other reptilians hiding in a cave. Their scaly skin could handle heat, but not what was coming. There was Nix Vo, floating near some crystal formations with another energy being. There were 2 rock people sitting under a metal shelter they had built. And somewhere out there was one more human cadet, alone and scared. As the suns moved closer, strange things began to happen. The air started to shimmer like water. The ground cracked and split open, showing glowing red underneath. Lightning jumped between the rocks even though there were no clouds. Hannah's lead stalker, the one she had started calling Shadow, made a worried sound. It pointed with its nose toward the crystal formations where Nix Voda was hiding. "What is it?" Hannah asked. Shadow scratched symbols in the dirt. The symbols showed the energy beings getting weaker as the binary eclipse approached. The electromagnetic chaos would make them fall apart like smoke in the wind. They're in danger, Hannah realized. We have to help them. But first, she needed to help someone else. Taro Beck and his team were trapped in their cave. Hannah could see smoke rising from the entrance. The rocks were getting so hot they were starting to melt. Any normal person would have chosen to save one group or the other, but Hannah was learning that humans did not think like normal people. "Shadow," she said to her lead stalker, "can you and to others help the energy beings? Keep them stable until the eclipse is over." Shadow tilted its massive head. The plan was dangerous. If the stalkers got too close to the electromagnetic chaos, they might be hurt too. "Please," Hannah said. "They are my pack now, just like you are." Shadow made a decision. It called to 2 other stalkers with a series of growls and purrs. Then all 3 of them phase-shifted and disappeared, moving like ghosts toward the crystal formations. Hannah turned to the remaining stalkers. "Come on, we have some reptiles to save." She ran down the ridge toward Taro's cave. The ground was so hot now that her boots started to smoke. Behind her, 3 stalkers flowed like liquid shadow, keeping pace easily. At the cave entrance, she could hear voices inside. Taro and his teammates were arguing in their own language. The words sounded angry and scared. "Taro," Hannah called out. "It's me, Hannah. You need to get out of there. Go away, human." Taro's voice came back, rough with pain. "We do not need your help. Your cave is turning into an oven. The rocks are melting. Better to die with honor than be saved by a weak human." Hannah felt frustrated. Even now, facing death, Taro's pride would not let him accept help from someone he thought was beneath him. She looked at her stalkers. They were waiting for her orders. She had an idea. It was crazy, but it might work. "Phase shift," she told the stalkers. "Go inside the cave, but don't hurt them. Just ... encourage them to leave." The 3 stalkers looked at each other, then at Hannah. She could almost see them smiling. They understood what she wanted. All 3 creatures became like smoke and flowed into the cave. A few seconds later, there were screams from inside. Not pain screams. Fear screams. Taro and his 2 teammates came running out of the cave so fast. They almost fell over each other. Their scales were bright red from the heat, and their eyes were wide with terror. "Stalkers in the cave," one of them shouted. "We are dead." "No," Hannah said calmly. "You are saved." She whistled, and the 3 stalkers flowed out of the cave and became solid beside her. But instead of attacking, they sat down like trained dogs. Taro stared at the sight. A human girl standing next to 3 of the most dangerous predators in the galaxy, and the predators were obeying her. "How?" he whispered. "I asked nicely," Hannah said. Then her expression became serious. "But we don't have time to talk. Look at the sky." The 2 suns were almost touching now. When they lined up completely, the binary eclipse would begin. And when that happened, everyone on the planet would die unless they worked together. "Follow me," Hannah said. "All of you. There's a safe place. But we have to move fast." Taro's pride fought with his survival instinct. His life support suit was failing in the extreme heat. His teammates were barely conscious. They needed help even if it came from a human, where he asked. The bone caves. Underground, the stalkers showed me. As they ran across the burning landscape, more cadets joined them. The two rock people saw the group and decided to follow. Their metal shelter had started to melt like butterdot at the crystal formations. Shadow and the other stalkers were doing something amazing. They had formed a circle around Nix Voda and the other energy being. Somehow, their presence was stabilizing the chaotic electromagnetic fields. The energy beings were weak, but they were not falling apart. Bring them too, Hannah called to Shadow. The group kept growing. By the time they reached the crack in the ground that led to the bone caves, all 8 surviving cadets were together. Humans, reptiles, rock people, and energy beings. Natural enemies in some cases, but now they were all following a small human girl and her pack of predators. Getting everyone down into the caves was not easy. The rock people were heavy and could not climb well. The energy beings were weak and kept flickering, but the stalkers helped, using their strength and phase-shifting abilities to move everyone safely. Deep in the bone caves, Hannah gathered all the survivors in the largest chamber. Above them, they could hear the binary eclipse beginning. The sound was like the planet screaming. Listen, Hannah said to the group. I know most of you think humans are weak. I know you think I should not be here. But look around you. She pointed to where cadets and stalkers were working together. A rock person was using his strength to brace the cave ceiling. An energy being was providing light. The stalkers were sharing their body heat to keep everyone warm. This is what the test was really about, Hannah continued. Not surviving alone. Not being the strongest or the smartest or the toughest. It was about learning to work together. About making enemies into friends. Taro looked ashamed. I was wrong. About you, human. About all humans. My name is Hannah, she said with a smile. And you were not completely wrong. Humans are not the strongest. We are not the fastest or the smartest. But we are good at one thing. What? Asked Nix Voda, their voice weak but curious. We are good at seeing the pack in everyone. Even in creatures that want to eat us. Outside, the binary eclipse raged for hours. The temperature swung from hot enough to melt steel to cold enough to freeze air solid. Lightning struck the ground every few seconds. The very atoms in the air went crazy. But deep in the bone caves, 8 cadets and 6 stalkers waited it out. Together, they shared food and water. They took turns keeping watch. They told stories to pass the time, and slowly, something changed. The artificial barriers between species started to break down. Rock people learned that reptiles were not just cold-blooded killers. Energy beings discovered that humans had thoughts and feelings just like them. Reptiles realized that humans were not weak, they were different, and that difference was actually strength. When the binary eclipse finally ended, something new had been born in those caves. It was not just an alliance of convenience, it was a real team, but more than that, it was a pack. And at the center of that pack was a small human girl who had taught everyone that the deadliest predator was not the one with the biggest teeth. It was the one who could turn enemies into family. The rescue ships arrived at dawn on day 4. Hannah stood on the ridge above the bone caves, watching the Academy shuttles descend through the morning sky. Her pack of stalkers sat around her like loyal guardians. Below, in the caves, the other 7 cadets were gathering their equipment and saying goodbye to their new friends. It felt strange to see the ships. 3 days ago, Hannah would have been desperate for rescue. Now she felt sad that the test was ending. Shadow, her lead stalker, made a questioning sound. It pointed toward the shuttles with its massive head, then looked at her with those bright yellow eyes. Yes, Hannah said softly. I have to go back with them. That was always the plan. But Shadow had another idea. It walked to a flat area and started scratching symbols in the dirt. The same symbols Hannah had learned to read over the past 3 days. The message was simple: stay lead. Hannah felt tears in her eyes. In 3 days, these creatures had become more than friends. They had become family. And now they were offering her something no human had ever been offered before. You want me to stay here? To be your leader permanently? Shadow nodded. The other stalkers gathered around, making their purring growling sounds. They were all agreeing. For a moment, Hannah imagined what that life would be like, living free on this wild planet, leading a pack of the most magnificent predators in the galaxy, never having to prove herself to anyone ever again. But then, she thought about the Academy, about all the humans back on Earth who were watching this test, about her grandmother, who had taught her that humans did not run from hard things. I cannot stay, she said finally. My pack is bigger than just you now. There are people in the galaxy who need to learn what I learned here. That being different is not being weak. That enemies can become friends. That humans have something to offer. Shadow looked sad, but it understood. It scratched one more symbol in the dirt. This one meant always welcome. Always, Hannah agreed. The shuttles landed on the flat ground near the caves. Academy instructors in environmental suits climbed out, looking around nervously. They had expected to find a few survivors hiding and waiting for rescue. Instead, they found something impossible. 8 cadets from 5 different species were working together to pack up their camp. They moved like a team that had been together for years, not days. And in the middle of them all was the human girl who was supposed to have died on the first day. Commander Vex Malari stepped forward, her crystal body reflecting the morning light. She looked at Hannah and the group of cadets, then at the 6 stalkers who were watching from the ridge. Cadet Lee Hannah, she said in her cold voice. Report. Hannah stood at attention. All surviving cadets are present and accounted for, ma'am. No serious injuries. Mission objectives completed. Mission objectives. Commander Malari's crystal eyes seemed to grow brighter. The objective was survival, cadet. Not ... whatever this is. She waved at the mixed group of species standing together. Like old friends. With respect, ma'am, Hannah said. I think the real objective was something else. Before Commander Malari could respond, Taro Beck stepped forward. The big reptilian looked nervous, but determined. Commander, he said. I request permission to speak. Granted. The humans saved us all, not just kept us alive. She brought us together. She made us better. Taro looked at Hannah with respect. I was wrong about her species. We were all wrong. Nyx Voda floated forward, their energy form glowing bright blue. The human taught us that strength comes in many forms. She showed us that leadership is not about being the biggest or the strongest. It is about bringing out the best in others. One of the rock people spoke up in their deep, slow voice. We thought humans were weak because they are small and soft, but we learned that they are strong in ways we never understood. They make connections, they build bridges, they create families from strangers. Commander Malari looked around at all the cadets. Every single one of them was defending the human girl. Even more shocking, they all seemed to mean it. And the stalkers? She asked, looking up at the ridge where the predators waited. They are not mindless killers, Hannah said. They are intelligent beings with their own culture. They were testing us to see if we were worthy of leadership. Most cadets tried to fight them or hide from them. I tried to understand them. Understanding does not explain how you survived the binary eclipse. Hannah smiled. We survived it together, ma'am. All of us. Humans, reptiles, rock people, energy beings, and stalkers. We worked as one pack. The commander was quiet for a long moment. Then she activated her communicator and spoke to someone back on the academy. Admiral Park, she said. You need to see this. A hologram appeared in the air. It showed Admiral Park Daeho, the only human in the academy's command structure. His face looked tired and worried. Commander Malari, he said. What is the status of our cadets? All 8 survivors are ready for pickup. But Admiral, ... we need to talk. The human cadet has changed everything. Admiral Park's eyes found Hannah. In the group, Cadet Lee Hannah, I see you are still alive. Yes, sir. The academy computers gave you a 2% survival chance. Do you remember what you said about that? Hannah's smile grew wider. I asked what I was supposed to do with the other 98%, sir. And what did you do with it? Hannah looked around at her friends, human, reptile, rock person, energy being, and even the stalkers on the ridge who were still watching over her. I used it to prove that the computers were measuring the wrong thing, sir. They measured how likely I was to survive alone. But humans do not survive alone. We survive by making everyone around us stronger. We survive by turning enemies into allies. We survive by refusing to accept that anything is impossible. Admiral Park was quiet for a moment. Then he did something no one expected. He smiled. Commander Malari, he said, I want you to bring all the cadets back safely, and I want a full report on everything that happened down there. Yes, sir, and Commander, start working on new training programs. If one human cadet can do this, imagine what we can do with proper training for our species' strengths. The hologram disappeared. Commander Malari looked at Hannah with something that might have been respect. Load up, cadets, she said. Time to go home. As the group walked toward the shuttles, Hannah heard Shadow calling from the ridge. She looked back to see all 6 stalkers standing at attention. Like soldiers saluting their commander, she saluted back on the shuttle ride back to the academy. The other cadets gathered around Hannah. They wanted to know everything about human culture, human history, human ways of thinking. Will you teach us? Asked Taro. When we get back to the academy, we can teach each other, Hannah said. That is what packmates do. 6 months later, Cadet Lee Hannah graduated at the top of her class, but more important than her grades was what happened next. The Academy created a new program called Interspecies Leadership Training. It was based on the methods Hannah had used on Infernus Prime. Students from different species learned to work together instead of competing against each other, and every new class of human cadets heard the same story. About the girl who was given a 2% chance and asked what she was supposed to do with the other 98%. The answer, they learned, was simple. You use it to prove that humans do not just survive impossible odds, they make impossible odds irrelevant.